Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. But I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome to hour number 3, our third and final. Live right here on the Early Line on this Tuesday. He is Donnie. I am Ben. A lot of basketball here in this final hour, previewing some big games around the association. A Tuesday night in college hoops. And, of course, as he does every week on a Tuesday morning, Jon Rothstein will join us later on in this third and final hour. I said some big games, DRS, around the NBA on this Tuesday night. None bigger then Luka Doncic against his former team in the Dallas Mavericks. Tonight in Los Angeles, it will be Doncic and the Lakers taking on the Mavs. No AD returning to LA, of course, as he is still out of the lineup, but a big game tonight in LA that leads off our third and final hour.
Yeah, it should be a good one tonight. And also, that not really a homecoming of sorts per se, but the Mavericks getting to take on Luka, and there's going to be a lot of energy in the building. He wants to show what a mistake that Dallas made, and he wants to prove a point in front of the Laker crowd. We get it. So it's a pretty good game to try to take a look at. The only shame of it, as you pointed out, is we don't get Anthony Davis in this game. That would have been great theater.
It would have been incredible theater for that to be the case, but still, as we get ready for this game, 1 of 7 on this Tuesday night in the NBA, and it is going to be sensational. So here are the odds. The Lakers feeling good, playing better basketball, snapping a short 2-game losing skid with a big road victory in Denver, outright as a dog on Saturday. A 9-point spread in favor of LA, total 232.5. Donnie, let's just start with our initial thoughts on this matchup. The Mavericks, of course, are going to be shorthanded without Anthony Davis, without Daniel Gafford for this matchup. Dallas trying to hold on to play in tournament positioning around the Western Conference. The Lakers trying to catch the Rockets for the 4th spot in the Western Conference to host the opening round of the playoffs in Los Angeles. A lot of stakes tonight, regardless of the familiarity and, of course, those interesting feelings between these two sides. What do you expect that atmosphere to be tonight, late night in LA?
I expect it to be pretty good because, again, you're still looking at the energy in the building coming from Luka's side and finally playing one of those masterpiece games we expected in his last performance. So you're expecting a double down on that, specifically going up against your previous team. If we take a look at the lines here, this line opened up in New Jersey at -7 points, now sits currently at 9. Some of their outlets, Ben, sitting at 9.5. So the energy certainly is towards the Lakers, and rightfully so. But I always look at these equations and say to myself, are we getting a little bit of bump in that line now that we see it 9, maybe 9.5 points? If you do have Kyrie Irving still going to be in that lineup and Klay Thompson, we understand the Lakers are the better basketball team and the Lakers are at home. But also some of those underlying values that we look at where, understand this, the Dallas Mavericks aren't coming to town to take on the Lakers like, you got us. We don't got AD and you stole our superstar player. We're just going to bow down. There's a lot of pride on some of these guys that go and watch us go into your building without AD and beat Luka. And if you don't think that general manager on the opposite side is looking at this game saying, guys, do me a solid tonight, don't do me dirty, yeah, that's going to take place.
The Mavericks on Sunday lost in San Francisco to Golden State. Lost by 24, not overly competitive. A return for Klay Thompson, if you will, as a 9-point dog. But Dallas had won 5 of its previous 6. Dallas, in its last 8 games overall, has covered 7 times, including a bunch as a dog in that span 5 times. So getting 9 points is not necessarily something Dallas is uncomfortable with. But of course, there will be a ton of notoriety on one Luka Doncic. In his first 3 games in the purple and gold, no more than 16 points, but a vintage Luka performance on Saturday at altitude. 32 points, 10 boards, 7 dimes. What will he do in his first game against his former team? That was the question to all of you in Fade the Public. So the points prop for Luka tonight listed in the low 30s. I just throw that out there because, of course, it will factor into our Fade the Public poll and this conversation. But maybe Luka doesn't care about the points prop. Maybe he's saying, you know what, Nico Harrison, you think I'm fat? You think I'm out of shape? Here's a 50 burger on your head tonight in our first game in this reunion. How many points will Luka Doncic score? That was the question to all of you at SportsGrid on Twitter in our Fade the Public poll. 50 plus, 40 to 49, 30 to 39, under 30. Those were your options. In most of the public, Donnie, flirting with that 30-point range. 41.2% under 30, 30 to 39, a little bit shy of 37% of the vote. Which way did DRS vote in our Fade the Public poll?
Yeah, let's ramp it up a little bit, too, because if you're looking at the FanDuel Sportsbook today and just want to put some numbers behind there, to get 30 points tonight or more, it's -156. So it's not as if you're saying, like, hey, this is a dumb poll. Over 30, that's crazy. He's never going to get there. No, he's actually the favorite to get over that number. 35 points or more tonight, +144. 40 points tonight, +340. 45 plus points tonight, 750, and then 50 points tonight, 12 to 1. So there are the numbers in place here. But for me, there's 2 ways to play this out because X's and O's, can he get 30 points? Of course he can. I did vote for under 30, which was 41%. So actually I'm with the favorite side, this one, at least from the public support. But I got to tell you, there's 2 ways it can play out. The Lakers know how big of a game this is for Luka Doncic, and he understands that. Where they're just looking for him to say, hey, kid, you know what? This is your night tonight. You need 15 triples. Go ahead and shoot them. You want to make sure you're not getting all those dimes down low. Like, hey, I want to be impressive with 13 assists, and you want to lay it in and get to the free throw line. Go ahead and do it. But also, from a Dallas perspective, is this one of those games like, you know what? We are the dogs here. The one thing damn sure know that I want to happen in this is Luka to get 50 plus on us, so we just double team him repeatedly at this point. That's what you're fighting with right now for some of the extracurriculars here. But I voted under 30 just to try to play the villain and the fade route here at this point. But knowing what Luka probably wants to do to the Mavericks tonight, that's a scary thought.
Again, 32 points for Doncic on Saturday night in Denver. He was 10 of 22 from the floor. He made 4 triples. He also had 10 boards and 7 dimes. 4 steals and a block for a guy whose defense has been questioned throughout his NBA career as well. I think more gratifying for Luka Doncic than a 40 or 50-point performance tonight would just be a win. Because Dallas tried to say that when they dealt Luka Doncic, they were still in win-now mode, despite the fact that Doncic nearly single-handedly brought the Mavericks to an NBA Finals appearance a season ago. So to me, Donnie, I also voted under 30, not expecting him to have a 14-point performance like we have seen twice in his 4 games in the purple and gold, but probably around 26, 28 points. I expect a really good game from Luka Doncic. I would look at the assist prop. I would look at the rebounding prop. Those are the numbers we are accustomed to for Luka Doncic in a regular season or even playoff NBA game. Not the numbers he was putting up in his first 3 games as a Laker. And I expect Luka Doncic to look more like that version the remainder of the way than his first 3 games in Los Angeles. What's crazy, Donnie, it feels like a lifetime ago. This blockbuster deal happened late on a Saturday night, early Sunday evening, on the first day without a Sunday actual NFL football game since early September. It's only been about 3.5 weeks that Luka Doncic has been in Los Angeles. What a whirlwind for him, of course, capped off tonight with what will be, I am sure, an emotional game for him and an electric atmosphere in Los Angeles as the Lakers host the Mavs.
Yeah, and by the way, since coming over for Luka from the three-point line, attempted 7 shots, 8 shots, 9 shots, and 9 shots here. So if we're expecting him to have a blockbuster night tonight, you might as well ramp up and ladder those three-point shot attempts made, because the graphic that showed up was 3.5. It just goes in par. Like, he can make 4 3-point shots, not have 30 points, right? But for him, you score, let's just say 35 points. I would be shocked if he makes 3 or less 3-point shots with that big of a night. So the correlation for me would be 3-point shots going down. That's the way I'd be comfortable with taking Luka Doncic tonight.
The Lakers have played 4 games with Luka in the fold. They are just 2-2 straight up. Hoping to make that 3-2 in a decisive fashion tonight against Dallas. More around the NBA up next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. So, but I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show. Only on SportsGrid.
Seven-game slate around the association tonight, and none bigger, of course, than what we have in Los Angeles with Luka Doncic and his now Lakers hosting his former team for the first time in the Dallas Mavericks. The Lakers technically in the 4 spot right now, DRS, in the Western Conference standings. one fewer win than the Houston Rockets, but also one fewer loss. 34-21 straight up the mark for LA. 35-22 the mark for the Rockets. Houston at home tonight, taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. 3.5-point spread in favor of the Rockets in H-Town. 226.5 is that total. A competitive game expected for two teams right now battling for playoff positioning in their respective conferences.
Yeah, opened up at 3.5 overnight as a favorite towards Houston. Did go to 4, as you see that graphic. Now back down to 3.5. If you look at the total in this game, 226 even at the opening number, 226.5 now at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Other outlets showing now 227.5. So that line looks like it's going forward. If you're looking at the anticipated starting lineup tonight, pretty clean on both sides. Lillard, Prince, Kuzma, Antetokounmpo, and Lopez for the Bucks, and then Van Vliet, Green, Thompson, Brooks, and Şengün for the Houston Rockets. If we are looking at the overall ticket counts here, a little bit skewed toward the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm going to favor the Houston Rockets tonight at the current line at 3.5. I think they can win this game by 5+ points. I do like the Bucks. Again, anytime you have Lillard and Antetokounmpo in the lineup and getting points, you sort of try to look that direction. But for me, I just think the Houston Rockets are the better basketball team, and at home tonight, I'll take them to win this game by 5+.
It is interesting to see Giannis back into the fold. Damian Lillard expected to play tonight in Houston, and the Bucks getting 3.5 points. Milwaukee has only been an underdog 16 times this year. I'm sure a majority of those games without at least one of the big two for the Bucks in the lineup. 8-8 against the spread. But Milwaukee has won 4 straight. Its final game before the All-Star break without Giannis. Its first game after the All-Star break. Giannis now back in the fold. 4 consecutive wins for Milwaukee. And because they have won 4 straight, despite having the same record as Indiana, having a couple of tiebreakers work out in their favor, the Bucks currently the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Pacers did lose at home last night to the Denver Nuggets. They moved back ever so slightly. Donnie, around, I guess you could say the end of January, I bet on the Rockets to win the Western Conference, much like I bet on the Kings a few years ago, just expecting them to be in a prime playoff position so that my price that was very long at the time would only get shorter. It hasn't. The Rockets were 32-14 on January 28th. Since that point, Houston has lost 8 of their last 11, including to the Jazz on the road over the weekend in Salt Lake. That's never a great thing for Houston. So not playing their best basketball as of this moment, still trying to improve that playoff positioning around the Western Conference. Let's go elsewhere to Memphis. The Grizzlies, 8-point home favorite tonight against the Phoenix Suns. Over-under stands at 245.5. The Nuggets have won 10 of their last 11. They have now overtaken Memphis for the 2 spot in the Western Conference. The Suns, not quite as bad, Donnie, as the Philadelphia 76ers, but in the same ballpark. 2 games out of a play-in tournament spot at this moment. 3 games under 500. Can the Suns keep it close in the grind city tonight?
It's crazy that we've been talking about that too, right? The opening line here in New Jersey at FanDuel 7.5. You see the graphic 8.5. It currently sits at -8 right now at FanDuel. The total 244, which is a high price point here, but it's actually risen down to 245.5 as a live number here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Like getting 8, let's just take the graphic there, right? Getting 8.5 points for Phoenix. Like, multiple stars probably down and out of the lineup. The estimated starting lineup tonight: Booker, Beal, O'Neal, Durant, and Richards. You're telling me that team is getting close to double digits if you're just reading into the lines? Anticipated lineup here for the Grizz: Morant, Bane, Wells, Jackson, and Edey. I'm telling you right now, double digit. Like, I'm out. Look at the past couple games here that you're looking at Phoenix. Same way we look at the Sixers. Like, hey, sooner than later, they're going to get it together. But no, they don't. Like, we're 3/4 of the way through the season. They're not getting it together, and they're on the road tonight. They get beat by double digits. That embarrassment continues for the Phoenix Suns.
That line should tell you everything you need to know. The fact that Phoenix is even getting 8 points is a strong indication of the basketball the Suns are playing right now. They have lost 8 of their last 10. They have covered just twice in this 10-game span. They have gone under in 4 of their last 6 against a Grizzlies team that has one of the highest over percentages in the NBA. And Memphis is a great cover team. Second best cover team overall. Second best cover team as a favorite. 24-13 against the number, covering by an average margin of 5.8 points per game. That is the best cover margin in a positive way for any NBA club booked as a favorite this year. Meanwhile, on the other end of the equation, the Suns are the worst cover team in the NBA. 19, 37-1 against the spread. That is very, very bad. And again, the odds makers are setting that expectation right away for Phoenix DRS with that 8-point spread. There is no longer a buy-in to these talented rosters, and I say that in air quotes, that just do not perform. There is no need to believe it. We are seeing a change in the tide around the NBA, and that line, 8 points in favor of Memphis at home, tells you all you need.
No, it does. It exactly does. Sometimes you can just read the lines because I gave you the anticipated starting lineup, 3 superstars in the lineup. You're like, hey, they have a puncher's chance, which usually means they're favored by 1, maybe getting 2.5 at this point. You're basically giving away double digits, and rightfully so, because if you're looking at the Phoenix Suns over the past couple games, lost to the Raptors. And by the way, their last 5 games have been on the road. Now, certainly split up here, including the game tonight from that All-Star break. But you lose to the Raptors on the road by close to 20 points here. You barely beat the Bulls. The Spurs beat you. And that was the game, I think, without Wembanyama, that one by double digits. So who's to say they're going to go up and actually exactly. Like, you're going to show up to this basketball game and try to compete. Now, at the final score, hey, Phoenix won the game. Well, yeah, Durant had 20 points or 25 points. So did Booker, and away you go. I'm done trusting it, though. Like, I look at that line and just reading into it, it's a stone-cold Memphis line tonight by double digits.
A pretty good NBA slate. Last night, a couple of clunkers around the association. 7 games tonight. 6 of the 7 have at least one team in the playoff or play-in tournament conversation. The only game without it, the Pelicans at home hosting the Spurs. New Orleans, a 3-point favorite. San Antonio, of course, without Wemby the remainder of this season, focused on greener pastures. The conversations have already started, like having the Admiral out there for San Antonio when they had the first overall pick and then he got injured to get Tim Duncan. Could they be doing the same thing with Cooper Flagg? That remains a joke at the moment. More around the NBA next.
Brady Tkachuk saying that if his brother did miss that overtime period against Canada like we saw him do, it must be serious out there. And of course, Brady Tkachuk, not a doctor, but you've got to wonder the status of Matthew Tkachuk and what we're going to find out.
Game time for all of these teams and all these players that were, teammates. Now they're facing off against each other. Now they're back to being teammates, whatever it might be. Like, it's time to get things rolling back in the right direction.
HL today, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
You have Duke the 1, Houston the 2. They're the 2 best defensive teams in the country. I want to see them play for the right to go to the Final Four because I think that would be a kick-ass game.
Duke is really great on both ends of the floor. They can score and they can defend, and that's why they win by big numbers all the time, because they're really good on both ends of the floor. I don't trust Houston's offense.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. We continue to go around the NBA slate on this Tuesday. The best team in the association, that would be the Cleveland Cavaliers, who right now are tied for the longest active win streak in the NBA at 7 wins in a row with who? the Detroit Pistons. But Cleveland, the best overall record, 47-10. They take that 7-game win streak on the road tonight as a 7.5-point favorite to Orlando against the Magic, total at 222.5, dropping ever so slightly. Often the case for the Magic, despite the Cavaliers playing in the most overs or the highest percentage of games to the over this year, the Magic often on the other end. What do you like tonight in Orlando between Cleveland and Orlando?
It's always hard to bite back and say you're going to fade the Cleveland Cavaliers. And you even see the line open up here at FanDuel in New Jersey at -6 overnight. Now we're seeing the 7.5 now currently on the line. We'll see if that can get even higher. But the total, it's a Magic total, right? 223.5. Oh, instant buy down to 222.5 on the live number right now. And I do agree with that. For me, I do think the Cavaliers win this game. But, and you know me, I back the Cavaliers a lot. Even in spots where, hey, the Knicks, red hot, it's a back-to-back. I think the Cavaliers win that game by double digits. They crushed the New York Knicks. So one of my favorite teams, no doubt, in the NBA to cover. But I do feel like the Orlando Magic have a legitimate chance in this game. But if I am betting this, it's probably the under 222.5, even though I get scared of sometimes that starting lineup and the scoring output that the Cavs can have. But the gameplay typically dictates here. Cavs just want to win this basketball game. Orlando knows they can't get into a shootout with the Cavaliers and say, hey, let's go 125, 124 in a game like that. It's going to have to be slowed down. Give me the under live at 222.5 in this game as it sits right now at the FanDuel Sportsbook. But I do think the Cavaliers do win this game.
We have a matchup between the highest over percentage team in the NBA, the only team that has played more than 35 games to the over this year, make that 38 for the Cavs, and the team that has played the most unders in the NBA this season, highest under percentage as well. That's Orlando, the only team that has played more than 35 of its games to the under, 37, in fact, for the Magic. The Cavaliers, DRS, top the charts in many different varieties. Best overall record, 47-10. Best cover team in the NBA as well, 37-19-1 against the number. Last year, Orlando, a great underdog, overwhelming that expectation set by the odds. This year, not nearly as much. 8-15-1 against the spread. The Magic right now, 29-30. They've played 59 games. They have played a ton of games to this point. They are one game below 500. They have a 1.5 lead for the top spot in the play-in tournament. That 7 seed, but now 3.5 games back of Detroit to get out of the play-in tournament and be the 6th seed directly into the playoffs. The Boston Celtics, one of 3 teams at the 40-win benchmark around the NBA, second best mark in the Eastern Conference. Double-digit favorite, as the C's have often been this year. Laying 11 on the road, up in the 6. Total at 226 now between the Celtics and the Raptors. What's the play in Toronto?
I like the over in this one. Take a look at the last 3 games that the Toronto Raptors have played. Against the Cavaliers, 131-108 final. Against the Miami Heat, notoriously not a really high-scoring team or game, 120-111. And then the Phoenix Suns, 127-109. You know the bomb squad's coming here for the Celtics. I look at that 11 as a legitimate chance to cover it, but I'm actually more confident in taking the over. For take a look at the updated lines on this game, 226 even, down from the 226.5 on the graphic. So I'm going to go that way. Give me the over 226 live here between the Celtics and the Raptors tonight.
Of course, it should be no surprise, DRS, the Celtics have been booked as the favorite in all but 3 games this year. They have not been a great cover team, just 24-29-1 against the spread, but Boston has now won 5 straight, and they have covered in all 5 of those games, of course, booked as a favorite. Toronto, listen, it's not been a great year for the Raptors by any means. Somehow, some way, much like everybody else around the Eastern Conference, the Raptors still got to have a shot at the play-in tournament, but they're back by 4.5 games and probably not all that thrilled with the idea of even qualifying for any aspect of the NBA postseason. 18-39, the overall record for the Raptors. As you do the quick math, that's 57 games played. The Raptors have been booked as a favorite in 52 of them. 31-20-1 against the spread. They have been a really good underdog team despite not winning many games outright, just keeping it close, staying competitive, trying to keep it within striking distance of that margin. It's double digits at home. I like to look to the over there. So that's what we have for the NBA tonight. 7-game slate around the association. And, of course, late night tonight in Los Angeles, Luka Doncic and the Lakers, a reunion of sorts, although probably a little bit of vitriol and some bad blood, as the Lakers and Luka take on the Dallas Mavericks for the first time. Let's get you the college basketball slate on this Tuesday night. Next.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. But I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Big news out of New York. Mitchell Robinson cleared for 5-on-5. OG Anunoby cleared for 5-on-5. That's big news for the Knicks as they start to get themselves healthy. It's about constructing the right roster, the combination of veterans, young guys, and transfers.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
I guess this is the battle for second place in the NBA's MVP. It's been Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He was like minus 250 a couple months ago. Then last month it was 3-1. It's now up to minus 440 here.
Voter fatigue is a real thing, but there is a chance for him to maybe go on a hot tear, go on a stretch that maybe opens the conversation back up a little bit. I wouldn't say Shai's completely out of the woods just yet.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Always a big Tuesday night in college basketball at this stage of the season as conference slates in the regular season at the high major level start to come to a close. And somehow, some way, DRS, Mississippi State still in the top 25. The reason I approach it as such, ranked 24th in the latest AP poll, as they head to Tuscaloosa tonight to take on 6th-ranked Alabama. The Bulldogs got off to a 14-1 start. Perfect in SEC play, 2-0 in the early beginnings of their conference slate. But now Mississippi State has lost 7 of their last 12 games, only covering 3 times in that 12-game span. And yet, still in the top 25, keeping it a top 25 tilt tonight in Tuscaloosa, as you see there. Alabama at home, expected to win this one rather comfortably. 8.5-point spread in favor of the Crimson Tide. And as every game is for Alabama, a high total at 169.5. I bet that number last night. It has not moved. It has remained still at 169 and a hook. Donnie, what do you like for this top 25 tilt tonight in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, it's interesting. You take a look at Mississippi State, right? Really known for their defense, but quite frankly, average possession of length on offense is 4th in conference play, which is sensational. And then, Alabama always going to be number 1 in conference play, getting the shot up. If you take a look at Mississippi State, sometimes it does come down to just the 3-point line and how these teams want to actually get after it. 16 teams that we're taking a look at here in the SEC. And if we're lining it up, 14th here at making the 3-point shot. Only 29% out of 16 teams is Mississippi State. However, they're 4th in conference play at launching from the 3-point line. Then you take a look at Alabama, decent at defending the 3, at only giving up about 32% as a team, but number 1 in conference play at chasing you off of the 3-point line. So then you flip it over to Alabama, number 1 in conference play at efficiency, number 1 at effective field goal percentage. Offensive rebounding, very good. Get to the free throw lines, yes, but also let's take a look at the three-point range where we love Alabama, who likes to shoot the three. Not overwhelming, 6 in conference play. It's shooting about 43% of their shots from three-point range. However, you take a look at Mississippi State's defense, Ben, 14th in conference at defending the three-point line at about 36%, but also 14th at volume, which means they're letting you shoot the three-point shot out of 16 teams here. That's what it comes down to me. And typically, you shoot better at home. If Alabama controls the three-point line like I think they will, it looks like to me, honestly, a double-digit win for Alabama, and we might even be looking at one of those team totals for Alabama over as well.
Mississippi State has been known for their defense. It is what Chris Jans does. As Donnie alluded to, he is known as the dentist by our next guest, Jon Rothstein, because it is never easy playing against them. This year's Mississippi State team on defense, not nearly as good. They've also gone over in 5 of their last 7 games, unable to control that tempo. I think it's a big Alabama night. We talked about bracketology earlier and the bracket odds that we have available on the FanDuel Sportsbook. Joe Lenardi lists the Crimson Tide as a number 1 seed, plus 130 on the outside, looking in at the 1 line, according to the FanDuel odds makers yesterday. But these are the games that Alabama can and frankly has to win to improve that seed line in the NCAA tournament. This will be the only game, at least as of right now, the Crimson Tide predicted to win. 8.5-point home favorite against Mississippi State before ending the year with a road trip to Tennessee, home game against Florida, road trip in the rivalry affair against Auburn. Nothing easy down south, even when you were not playing a top 25 foe. Florida on the road tonight, ranked 3rd in the country, taking on Georgia. 6.5-point spread in favor of the Gators. Over understands at 148.5. DRS, I said a couple of weeks ago, maybe even just last week, that Florida at a minus 115 price, I would bet them to be a 1 seed. It's where they are projected right now. But you can't have slip-ups, even in conference competition. What's the play tonight in Athens?
Yeah, again, Florida should win this game. Obviously, they're favored to do so, but it is a road game in the SEC. But understand this, if there's a matchup I'm looking forward to, it's Georgia's offense taking on Florida's defense, and that's from a Florida defensive perspective. Number 2 in conference play, an efficiency here, but understand this too. Georgia's offense is really bad, 14th in efficiency out of 16 teams. But when we break it down, they turn the basketball over way too much, but also keep in mind, 3-point range, the worst in conference play at shooting as a team at 29%. 14th out of 16 teams inside the arc and only shooting 48%. So you match it up with Florida's defense, number 2 at defending the 3-point line, number 3 at defending inside the arc, and stealing easy points, not necessarily one of those things that I'm looking for from Georgia, because they get to the free throw line about average in conference play. Florida fouls about average, but understand this, they're below average at converting from the free throw line at only 71% as a team. So the way to play for me, do I think Florida wins? Yes. Do I want to lay, let's just say 7.5? Not necessarily. Do I want to take the total under at 148.5? Not really, because Florida, as we know, can tune up that Georgia defense. But the one thing I'm not expecting here is an explosive night out of Georgia's offense. The way I approach it would be Georgia's team total to the under.
When you really look at this right now, DRS, Georgia's still in bubble conversation, kind of in the next 4 out, not the first 4 teams to miss the NCAA tournament. The overall record, not great for UGA, 16-11. They don't have any bad losses. All 11 losses in quad 1, but they only have 2 quad 1 victories. Of course, this would be that opportunity tonight. Mike White, the current head coach in Georgia, who has been in Athens for the last 3 seasons, former head coach at Florida. The Gators, DRS, one of the best cover teams in all of college basketball. They are 20-7 against the spread. Florida, one of 4 teams around the country of 364 at the D1 level that have covered in at least 20 games so far this season. The Gators have won 6 straight. They have covered in all 6. Also under in 7 of their last 10. Plenty of action to choose from around the country tonight in college basketball. Let's highlight a few. Duke, hefty favorite, heading to Miami. Been a very disappointing year, of course, for the Hurricanes. Tennessee continues to keep its roll going. Still trying to hunt down that 1 line. Double-digit favorite against LSU. Iowa State, double-digit favorite against Oklahoma State. Wisconsin hoping to bounce back at home against Washington. Louisville, still alive in ACC title consideration. Double-digit favorite against Va Tech. And a big one out in the Mountain West. San Diego State, 2.5-point home favorite against Richard Pitino and the New Mexico Lobos. Of these games, Donnie, or any other, what catches your attention most on this Tuesday?
Yeah, it might be the last one there. New Mexico and San Diego State. The calling card always for San Diego State is defense, and they're at home with the number one most efficient defense in conference play. But the one thing we know about New Mexico, boy, they can push tempo and get up and down the court. Yep. Maybe the advantage for New Mexico tonight is they love to get to the free throw line, and San Diego State being a physical defense will allow you to score points there. But otherwise, number one at defending the three-point line, number one inside the arc at that point here. So for me, I probably look at this game saying, all right, San Diego State, not a great offense going up against a quality New Mexico defense. How about just the under for the game in totality? Two good defenses, two good offenses, but in a high-pressure leverage situation, maybe that defense does win out tonight out west.
This Lobos team right now, first place in the Mountain West at 14-2, 22-5 overall this year. New Mexico, led by Rich, going to be in the tournament, as is his father, Rick Pitino, and St. John's. Of course, a huge matchup tonight. The Lobos have had nearly a week off. They lost to Boise State on the road in Boise last Wednesday. Fourth fastest tempo in the country. Donnie, I'm excited to see what this Wisconsin team does in its response from blowing a 16-point second-half lead against Oregon on Saturday inside the Kohl Center. I would look at the total for tonight's game at 150.5. Washington will allow you to score if you must in the Badgers. After 17 turnovers on Saturday, looking for a much better offensive performance tonight against the Huskies.
Absolutely. And also, if you're into some three-point shooting here, having some fun, my guy Rain Smith out of Louisville, they play tonight as well. Ooh. I missed out over the weekend, over 4 3-point shots made. He made 3 by early in the second half. Wasn't able to get over the total, but Louisville was able to go over the team total for myself. By the way, Louisville, still think they're under the radar playing some good basketball in the ACC here, Ben.
Pat Kelsey has done a sensational job in Louisville with the Cards in his first year. DRS, enjoy the money line, man. Yeah. We'll miss you here on the early line, but until we talk tomorrow.
Stay strong,
on the
Internet.
other side of the break, for the last time in February, it's Jon Rothstein next on TV Now.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We know the Knicks are talented. They're 37-20. It's not a bad season by any stretch. They're just not being the upper echelon team.
This is the Knicks team right now. They're a very good team. And I'm a Knicks fan. You can't look at there and say, this team can win a championship. They're not good enough. They're not good enough defensively. Are we the New York Knicks or are we the New York Fugazis? Just forget about it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. So, but I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
For the final Tuesday in the month of February, Jon Rothstein joins us live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. On behalf of the wonderful FanDuel Sportsbook and, of course, doing incredible coverage, especially at this time of year for CBS Sports. Jon, I am sure the alarms and the reminders are set for Saturday, but just in case anybody else needs them out there, what exactly happens on Saturday?
We step into the greatest month of the year, Ben, and it isn't close. A month that has no peer. But right now, this is still only February.
Still only February for just a few more days. The month of March on the horizon. March 1st is Saturday. Midnight, Jon will let you know. Yesterday on a Monday, Jon, for a second consecutive year, for their 2 years in the Big 12, Houston clinches at least a share of the Big 12 regular season crown. Going on the road, and the Cougs knocking off Texas Tech in Lubbock 69-61. Houston covering as a 4.5-point road favorite. Jon, 2 years in the Big 12 and 2 conference championships to show for it. What does this show to you about Houston as one of the premier programs in college basketball?
Well, think about this for a second, Ben. The winning percentage that Houston had in its final 2 years in the American Athletic Conference in terms of league regular season games is comparable to the winning percentage that Houston has had in its first 2 years in the Big 12 in regular season games. That tells you all you need to know about the caliber of job that Kelvin Sampson is doing. He's a National Coach of the Year candidate. He has created in 2 years a new flagship program in the Big 12. Houston has usurped Kansas for that title, and it's only taken the Cougars 2 years, but I'm sure all of those accolades, as nice as they are, Kelvin Sampson would trade for a national championship.
Certainly so, and the Cougs should be in a good position to do just that. You mentioned Kansas maybe being unseated at the moment atop the Big 12. Yesterday, Jon, some history for the Jayhawks, but not in the way they would want. Outside of the AP Top 25 for the first time in 4 seasons, snapping an 80-week streak. Just the second time in the last 313 AP polls that Kansas has been left on the outside looking in. And, of course, KU this year entered the season as preseason number 1. But, Jon, it's not just Kansas. 5 of the AP Top 10 in the preseason no longer ranked at this current juncture. To you, does that say something in particular about this 2024-25 college hoop season?
I think it says something about the landscape in general, that with NIL, with the transfer portal, things can be leveled out a little bit. Now, all of a sudden, programs like St. John's, like BYU, programs get the adequate funding to put together a quality roster, have a chance to usurp the quote-unquote blue blood programs. It's made for a much more balanced and competitive structure in the overall landscape of college basketball.
Yeah, absolutely so. And, Jon, you look at those 5 teams. It includes the reigning 2-time national champs in Connecticut, a Baylor team, a North Carolina team flirting with the NCAA tournament bubble, and a Gonzaga team that still has won 20 games this year. We'll talk to Zags in just a moment. This is the movement to win a national championship for 5 of those teams that were inside the AP Top 10. There's a lot, of course, that goes on with all of these programs through a long college basketball season. Is there any commonality you can point to among these programs that has led to a lackluster season to this point?
Well, I think one thing that we have seen from all those programs is all of them depended on major additions out of the transfer portal to be difference makers. UConn obviously invested a lot in Aiden Mahaney and Taris Reed. Baylor flipped over its roster, brought in Jeremy Roach, Norchad O'Meara, players of that caliber. It's been well documented that Kansas added A.J. Storr, Rylan Griffin, Zeke Mayo. And, I think what we're seeing, Ben, especially in this climate, is that the programs that are able to retain players and bring them back for a second year in the system have a major leg up on other programs in the sport. I mean, look at the core of St. John's right now. Simeon Welcher, Zuby Ejiofor, R.J. Lewis were all a part of Rick Pitino's program last season. Now you can see the strides that they have made in their second year. And there's other programs also that you can make the same argument about. How about in the Patino family, we go to New Mexico? Donovan Dent, Nelly Jr. Joseph, Mustafa Amzil, True Washington. The core players from New Mexico were all a part of that team that won the Mountain West Conference tournament last year and earned an automatic qualifier to the NCAA tournament. So that program, even though it lost Jamal Mashburn Jr., even though it lost Jalen House, even though it lost JT Toppin, who might be the Big 12 player of the year, is still on better footing than it was a year ago because of player retention.
A big one for New Mexico tonight as well against San Diego State. Another big one out on the West Coast. Gonzaga, as we shared, not ranked in the AP Top 25, not going to win the West Coast Conference regular season crown. That was St. Mary's clinching that on Saturday with the upset in Spokane, but still firmly in the NCAA tournament field. They take on a 19-win Santa Clara team tonight in California. 6.5-point spread in favor of the Zags. John, what are the NCAA tournament implications of this matchup?
Well, Gonzaga has a very, very tricky last week because Santa Clara scored 109 Saturday against Washington State and made 23 threes. Also already beat the Zags earlier this season in Spokane. And then Gonzaga is going to play on Saturday a San Francisco team, again, at the Chase Center, that's been very capable under Chris Gerlifson. So it's a really difficult last week of the season for Gonzaga. But the team I'm watching right now, Ben, is Santa Clara. I was at a Santa Clara practice in the preseason. This program obviously has felt time and time again that it's been on the door of making the NCAA tournament. And if you look at Herb Sendek's program the last couple of years, everything has been accomplished except making the NCAA tournament. Multiple 20-win seasons, multiple first-round picks, Jalen Williams, Brandon Pajemski. But to me, Ben, this is the team, Santa Clara, that could be the bid stealer at the West Coast Conference tournament in a couple of weeks, coming up in Las Vegas. We don't have vintage Gonzaga. St. Mary's has been great. And then you have the additions of Oregon State and Washington State. I think you can make the case, pound for pound, inch for inch. This will be the best WCC tournament that we have ever seen this season. But Ben, you know as well as I do, despite what's lurking a couple of days away, this is still only February.
Still only February for just a few more days. But Jon Rothstein, whatever month it is, you always bring it, my friend. Thanks for being here on the early line. More of the show up next.
The Eagles got it done. If you back them, you're celebrating. Football season may be over, but the action never stops.
Are you ready for some baseball?
At SportsGrid, we're always in the game. We bring you 24/7 betting insights, expert picks, and real-time analysis. Next big play is already in motion. Are you ready? It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Is that kind of helpful when it comes to preparing for a major? Is that you're just like 1 foot in front of you at this point?
Ideally come to a place here at Bay Hill where I've had good success in the past. I've only played it the last 21, 2, 3, and 4. But I've played it well, and I really like that we're heading there with where I'm at right now. I think it's going to tell me a lot.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
Let's go around the country one final time in the final segment here on this Tuesday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. Jon Rothstein breaking it down. Donnie right side breaking it down with some picks, some bets, and some previews for tonight in college basketball. As we continue to look at the docket around the country that we discussed with DRS. Again, a couple of big bounce-back spots loom on the horizon tonight. That would be for Wisconsin. Now a 14.5-point spread in favor of the Badgers at home. That total for Wisconsin tonight as they get ready to host Washington, 150.5. If the Badgers offense performs in much the way we have seen this year, 80-plus points at bare minimum, they should have a good chance of going over that number of 150 and a hook if they are going to come close to winning the game as comfortably as the odds makers expect. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, Illinois needs a big bounce back in Big Ten play, back in Champaign after getting embarrassed inside Madison Square Garden on Saturday night, losing by a worse margin of defeat in program history, 43 points. The Illini a double-digit favorite against Iowa. It's been a difficult year for the Hawkeyes. Could some changes be looming in Iowa City? We shall see. But Iowa just one quad one win in 10 quad one losses at this moment. LSU not great in the quad one component either, but they're a double-digit home dog tonight against Tennessee. If the Volunteers are going to be on the one line, and they have a decent shot of doing so, these are the games you can't get caught up on. Same for Florida, as we shared 6.5-point favorite tonight in Athens against UGA. It is almost trivial, right, to say these are the games you can't slip up on in SEC action. But that's the strength of this conference. You got to beat the best to earn those quality wins. You're not hampered by losing those games necessarily, but you got to beat the best to get those quality metrics on your resume and can ill afford a slip-up spot. The Vols will look to avoid that tonight. Total 137.5 in the Bayou. Missouri, 12.5-point favorite tonight at home against South Carolina. Another bounce-back spot for Mizzou, 145.5 being that total. The Tigers did struggle over the weekend after pasting Alabama, scoring 110 earlier in the midweek. Missouri and Dennis Gates looking for one of the best turnarounds we have ever seen in college basketball. Certainly at the high major level. Did not win a single SEC game a year ago, including all 18 in the regular season and their only game in the SEC tourney. They, of course, have done so much better already this year. So as we go around the country, just a couple of other games to keep an eye on. Can Duke continue to roll in the ACC? The odds makers expect that to be the case. 22.5-point spread now in favor of the Blue Devils. But I do want to highlight, just for everybody out there, the ACC standings at this moment. Duke is 15-1. The only blemish, a road loss to Clemson. The Tigers still in the hunt, 14-2. Louisville, 14-2 as well. Again, the Cards on the road tonight in Blacksburg, taking on Va Tech. They're a double-digit road favorite. Louisville has already played Duke this year. They lost by 11. It was the first ACC game for both teams. Now with 17 teams, though, in the ACC as a league as a whole, there's not really that second matchup for the Cards to try to right the wrong against the Blue Devils. So they would have to win out. They would need Duke to lose at least once down the home stretch. Clemson in a better position, although Louisville has beat Clemson as well, because Clemson does have the win against Duke if they were to end with that same win-loss record. Clemson does not play tonight. They are home against a bad Notre Dame team tomorrow. Clemson then has Virginia, BC, and Virginia Tech to end out the year. Duke has been dominant in the ACC and still should win the conference, but it's not necessarily like Duke has a lot of wiggle room because of how good teams like Clemson and Louisville have been. The Blue Devils still booked as a minus 850 favorite to win the league. The Cards at plus 900 in Clemson at a 10-1 number. So still a lot to be decided. Some other games that might tickle the fancy around the country tonight. A couple of bubble teams. West Virginia, 6.5-point favorite against TCU. Marquette has not played very good basketball as of late. They have dropped 4 of their last 6, only covering once in the 2 wins against DePaul and Seton Hall. The Golden Eagles at home tonight against Providence as a double-digit favorite. Oh boy, 3 hours on the early line. We'll do it all again tomorrow on a Wednesday, starting at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, live right here on the Grid. We'll talk to you then. We'll talk tomorrow on SportsGrid.